So, Catwoman Hunted is the first DC animated movie of 2022, and it's coming out a little less than a month before Zoe Kravitz is supposed to wow audiences with her performance of the Catwoman in Matt Reeves The Batman. And I feel like this movie was supposed to get fans hyped and excited for that movie, but I was kind of left with a love-hate relationship with it. So, let's get to it. So, first, let's talk about the animation style. So, this movie is clearly drawn in an anime animation style, and it is beautiful. Don't get me wrong, it's beautiful, and it has some nice updated modern digital touches, some 3D action going on, but it just doesn't seem to work. I mean, other DC movies that have done this have been like Batman Ninja, and it seems to fit that movie, right? That style. It just doesn't seem to fit here. That's not to say that the anime animation style cannot be applied to non-anime genre animated films, if that makes sense. But I just felt like I was constantly taken out of this movie because I was watching this expecting to see an animation style that's traditionally made with DC animated movies or even DC animated cartoons. And yet I'm watching this in the form of an anime style animation, and I'm thinking of other mindsets of like true anime, like Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super and Sailor Moon and Tony Renshin and Gundam Wing. I'm just thinking like all these other things in my head, not Catwoman, not a DC animated movie. So I felt like because of that, it just kept taking me in and out of the movie overall. Like I said, it was very nice to watch. The animation style was good. It was confusing to me at times. I just kind of have to keep checking myself. Am I watching a DC anime movie about Catwoman, or am I watching an anime? That is some things that kept coming up. And on top of that, because of that, the theme, feel, and story of the movie that I feel like it was trying to convey, I feel like the message would have got through to audiences better if it was done, like I said, in an animation style that we're more familiar with, or with this type of movie, more of the style like the Batman animated series, other recent DC animated films like Injustice, or even The Long Halloween, the two back-to-back Batman movies that came out where the Catwoman is actually in it. So I think those would have been better animation styles that would have suited this movie. Adding on to that, I will say this movie really doesn't feel like it matches what Catwoman is. So adding to the animation style, the dialogue, the music, and just the overall feel of the movie just didn't work for me. Many times I was watching this and it reminded me of Sailor Moon, or even a kid show that I remember watching on Cartoon Network called Totally Spies. And not that that is necessarily a bad thing per se. It just, again, doesn't make me feel like I'm watching Catwoman or what I would expect to see from Catwoman. Now, my version of Catwoman is Batman the Animated Series, the old Adam West Batman, which I would think is probably the closest thing I can think of a Catwoman to this type of movie. And of course, Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, which is way on the opposite side of the spectrum. That's not even anywhere near this movie. But aside from other DC animated movies that I've seen her appear in, the closest thing I think of that would be close to this is the Adam West Batman. But even then, it just didn't seem to work, because like sometimes when the movie would transition to the next chapter, it would play music as if it was Catwoman's theme, and that's much like how a Sailor Moon episode would play out. So like when Selena Kyle would do her action scenes, or the way she would talk or react to their characters, it just made me, then the Totally Spies, scenario would kick in and have some of the same shared qualities. So it just didn't seem to work for me. You can let in the comments below what you think, if you picked up on that, and if it comes out across to you, if it works or not. But I just don't think that was needed. And one of the things that ended up annoying me quite a bit during the movie, which I wouldn't want any viewer to feel if I was watching a movie, is Catwoman had catchphrases. And I'm like, what the heck? So multiple times in the movie, Selena Kyle is saying something to someone about, oh, I love that, I might steal that. Oh, I love him or her, I might steal that. Something to the end, something to say and end with, I will steal that, or I would steal that. And it just got annoying after a while. And if DC is trying to get fans on board with this new catchphrase, I don't think it's going to work. And on top of that, if writers were trying to even, like, they did these catchphrases, but then they even had one of their own characters in the movie poke fun at that catchphrase and even say it was annoying to them. So I'm not really sure what they were going with that and why they wouldn't put that in there, because it just annoyed me. And maybe it may not annoy you, but I was like, yes, let's quit saying that. Don't say that anymore. Next, I want to talk about one of the highlights of the movie. Like I said, love-hate relationship with this movie. One of the highlights of the movies for me is Batwoman's appearance in this film. Her and Catwoman's dynamic and banter make for entertaining scenes. After watching these two throughout the movie, I was left wanting more, and if I were DC, I would give them their own movie, a comic series, if there hasn't already been one, or maybe even get Catwoman to guest star on the Batwoman CW show if CW is still around, because the relationship is just that good. And what's very interesting about this is that Catwoman is usually always paired with Batman, right? Or other members of the Bat family like Batgirl and what's shown in like cartoons and movies and comics. But her relationship here with Batwoman, it still seems fresh and refreshing, even if it's still a member of the Bat family. All right, now moving on to a real love-hate point of this movie that I had is the villains. Now, this movie has a ton of villains, and many of them are probably ones that you have not really heard of, which I appreciated. Much like the new Peacemaker show on HBO Max, where they're giving you villains or talking about villains within the DCEU, it just they're characters that you probably have never heard of, and I found myself a lot of times having to, Google them and wiki them and find out who they are and what they are about. So I really did appreciate that this movie brought that, because we're accustomed to the general set of Batman's rogue gallery, which typically stems to Catwoman and any of his superhero buddies or villain buddies. But I like this movie because there was a lot of them that you see and remember from like Teen Titans and other shows you may have watched, but other ones that I'm like, oh, I've never heard of that character before. Or, oh, I know that person can do that. So it was just kind of cool to see that in this movie. Now, in saying that, we got a lot of villains in this movie, and some seem weaker than I would have liked, or some didn't even get that much screen time. So if you're going to put all these villains in there, at least give them something to do, because I feel like some of these villains got the Mortal Kombat Legends Battle of the Realms effect, where they just kind of put them in there and they get very little screen time. So I wish, if you're going to put these villains in there, don't just have them do one, two things and then they're out. Make sure you give them purpose, or just don't include them at all. Next up, I want to talk about the third act, because I really enjoyed the third act, and for me, that's probably the best part of the whole movie, the end. I know that sounds really bad, but the end. And there were two parts about it that I really liked, and the first part is a fun battle between Catwoman and Batwoman, who are up against a large number of assassins. And their chemistry and rivalry together just made the whole sequence really fun, because they pretty much make a game out of it, and you just are... you kind of think to yourself, if this had been the whole movie to begin with, I might have enjoyed this movie more. But, you have this sequence that you really enjoy, and then it leads up into the second part of the third act, and it just kind of keeps going from there, which makes it better. And the second part is when Catwoman is pinned against a famous villain, and it makes the battle feel like a battle that you definitely want to see happen before. Like in your mind, if you think, if I could pit Catwoman against any other villain, who would that be? And it's definitely a battle that will keep you on the edge of your seat at certain parts. I guarantee it. But definitely the third act was probably my favorite part of the whole movie. So let's talk about some future animated movies and the Batman. So as I said in my intro, this is the first DC movie of 2022. It's actually one of 4 2022 animated movies and a 5th short. And I understand these movies are I understand that some of these movies are reimagining and just a one-off story that doesn't necessarily tie into another movie or a group of movies, but I feel like I like the DC movies of old that we're still able to tell one-off stories, but still be related in the same universe and tie into each other in a future movie, just like you would do in the MCU. That's what basically works for them. And I know that DC has a constant problem with this, live action and animated alike, ever since they've had this kind of like DC animated reboot, if per se. And I think if they would just stick to the source material more and try to connect their movies, I feel like some of these movies would be better off. Injustice is kind of an anomaly, because Injustice is a complete reimagining, but it has sequels set in its universe. Some of these movies don't really have that. These are just one and dones. Like this one, I feel like could be a one and done. We could have another adventure with Catwoman in the same animation style and same theme and feel. Tweak a little bit if you're going to do that. But I could see this still having like a Catwoman Batwoman adventure going forward. Now, in saying that, if DC thought this movie was going to get Catwoman fans or Catwoman trending in a positive way, or fans hyped for Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman performance in The Batman, I don't think this movie's quite going to do that. While, of course, I watched this movie for Catwoman as a DC fan, I just walked away thinking I hope The Batman and Catwoman are so much better than this movie. And I should not walk away feeling that way. I should not walk away like that at all. I should watch this movie like, dang, Catwoman is awesome. Catwoman is, the bomb. I know, I'm showing my age. But I'm like, yeah, I can't wait to see her in The Batman. It's going to be great. I'm not like, this isn't great. Is this how the Batman's going to be? Like, is this reimagining going to suck as much as that reimagine? Like, is this going to be that bad? Like, is the Batman going to be bad as this Catwoman? I really hope not. I don't feel like it's going to be. I feel like the Batman's getting a lot of good hype, but this did not give me a lot of good faith in that. So, don't think this is going to be it. So, to my rating. So with that, I give Catwoman Hunted 2 out of 5 Catwomans. I would only recommend watching this if you're a diehard DC fan or if you really, really love Catwoman. Other than that, I would just pass on watching this at all until after you've seen The Batman. Even then, if you don't get around to watching this, wait for it to come on HBO Max and just watch it on streaming. I would not watch it any other way than that. Let me know in the comments what you think about my review of Catwoman Hunted. Like I said, I had a love-hate relationship with this movie, but it just ultimately did not work out for me. That's it for this video, guys. Enjoy, hit that like button. If you want to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys next time on the Mashup.